Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of KPCC and LAist, welcome to our No Panic Guide Live virtual event series. I'm John Cohn. I manage live programming and events for KPCC and LAist. This series is an extension of the more comprehensive Your No Panic Guide resource from our newsroom. You can find that at laist.com. Today's edition is focused on caregiving for 0 to 5-year-olds. And I can tell you, as the parent of a toddler, I will be paying very, very close attention. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have more events coming up. You can sign up for our weekly events newsletter and follow us on social media for updates. And if you're in a position in which you can support KPCC and LAist, we are always extremely grateful for anything you can do. Links to all these points of connection are in the comment section. And without further ado, here's KPCC and LAist early childhood education reporter, Mariana Dale.
Hi there, and thanks to everyone for taking time out of their day to join us. I cover early childhood at KPCC. That means that you can hear my stories on the radio at 89.3, and you can also read them online at laist.com. Things I've been covering lately have a lot to do with what to do with your kids at home, the scramble to find childcare for essential workers, and how safe face masks are for kids. And I know a lot of you out there are home with your little ones right now, and there is no possible way that I have answered all of your questions with my reporting. And so that's why we called in some backup for today's conversation. So joining us is Reena B. Patel. She founded the company Autism and More. She's been a guidance counselor and licensed educational psychologist who's been working in the field for more than 20 years in hospitals, schools, and in private practice. She's also the mom of 3 who is having her own homeschooling experience right now, and she is joining us from San Diego. How are you today, Reena?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
And we also have Rocio Lopez. She's Community Partnerships Manager at the nonprofit Common Sense Latino. A big part of her work is helping parents think about the role technology plays in their lives, and she's here in Los Angeles.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
So why do we have this focus on 0 to 5? Why do you have a whole reporter like me to cover it? That's because it's a time of rapid brain development for kids. They might have a short attention span, it seems like, but what's really happening in their brain is that there's more than 1 million new connections being made every single second. And that includes every second that they're at home with you. I thought we would start out with a question that we got before the event started, and it's from Jennifer. She asks, how would you encourage parents to create kind of a ratio between solo play for kids versus activities that they do with an adult?
I think that's a great question. I would rephrase it maybe versus looking at a ratio to really look at your child where they are developmentally. And you, at the end of the day, know your child the best and really focus on not only their chronological age, but where they are developmentally and what skills that they have. One of the big factors is their ability to attach and detach themselves and be a little bit of a distance away from mom and dad or any type of caretaker. And so, for example, if a child is a year old, I would expect about 5 to 8 minutes of independent play with that, which includes exploring. And as your child gets a little bit older, they're going to be able to have a longer duration. And so I would really focus on that. And when it comes to group activity, it's not necessarily how often they are with other children their age. It's also how they are amongst their siblings, with mom and dad, with grandma and grandpa. And so those activities and those times spent, especially now during this pandemic, even the virtual time is considered group time.
And Rocio, what are some ways that parents can experience technology with their children?
That's exactly what I'm here for and what Common Sense is providing parents as far as guidance in this new digital age. And now, on top of that, the crisis that we're currently all going through. So we actually have a ton of resources, and I invite everybody to check us out at commonsense.org. But as far as children right now, we are encouraging for parents to use technology as a way for learning and have kids still interact with each other, but now, for example, via FaceTime. And that's exactly what we're doing with parents, is guiding them on how to create their family media plans during this time. And one thing that we do want to make sure that parents know is take the guilt and shame, just throw that out the window. A lot of parents are thinking about screen time in terms of what is the maximum number of hours that my kids should be on a screen. However, not all screen time is the same. When they're just, viewing something for hours and hours on end, obviously they're just consuming it, right? However, if they're using a learning application or one of these programs that are being curated by, various companies that are interactive and that have them, think critically and then apply it to a game they play, or then, learn with their siblings or with their parents, that's the kind of screen time that we're really wanting to promote and have parents feel okay that their children are interacting with technology in that way.
And Esther wrote into us and she had a question. She wanted to know how we can talk to preschoolers about the length of time that we're going to be impacted by physical distancing. She says every morning her son wakes up and asks, like, is this over yet? She tells him it's going to be a little month. They even have a calendar. But how do you explain that to someone who's pretty small?
Well, at that age, preschool, you are what's called a concrete learner. So you will understand best when you see. And that's why, just like this question that came about, use of calendars are so essential and crucial because they're able to see. And beyond numbers, really have what day of the week it is and have it visual. Visuals are so important. Make it colorful. And use the word sometimes. And by using the word sometimes, we're teaching our children that it isn't black and white. We have a little bit of flexibility and variability. And be honest with them. We are in a time where we actually don't know. And it's okay to let your little ones know that we don't know that answer, because oftentimes children ask us questions and the answer is we don't know. And it's a great way to start teaching them. And then show it a week at a time, look at it a day at a time. And this is where we are. And this is what we expect to happen tomorrow. But preparing children for the unexpected really helps them understand that we really don't know what's going to happen next, but that they are safe, and reminding them that they are secure. And there will be a time that they do get to go back to school and do get to go to those birthday parties and play dates, because that day will come. We just don't know when.
Frankly, I'm having a hard time keeping track of what day it is, so maybe I need a calendar. I think what you mentioned about the uncertainty, though, is really real, because even for adults, it's hard to deal with uncertainty. So let me make sure we understood this right. It's okay to be honest that you're unsure when the distancing is going to end, but as a reassurance, you can mention, you're safe and I'm taking care of you.
Absolutely. The biggest thing children, especially birth to 5, I mean, the little ones around even 12 months of age, even 6 months of age, and that's when you develop that what's called secure attachment. And so making sure that they have their loveys around, making sure that they have the item that really makes them feel secure, even if it is beyond night. We have to understand that children during this time are still feeling uneasiness. It's okay. They are still experiencing the same type of stress we as adults have. They're presenting it differently. And so don't be alarmed if your children start to regress a little bit. And the whole idea is just to make them feel secure and safe. And that's my number one recommendation during this time.
And Rocio, I'm wondering if you have any ideas of activities or different apps that are maybe like comforting for children to use, or that will amuse them or kind of brighten their day a little bit if they're feeling a little uncertain or frustrated that they can't go to their friend's house.
Absolutely. Actually, at Common Sense, we're writing blogs and articles and producing videos every single day with ideas on activities, learning apps that promote learning and physical activity. We have recommendations for online playtime dates that kids can have via FaceTime with other children and what they can do with each other to keep them interacting with each other and keeping them growing in that social emotional learning, which we know is amazing when kids get to interact with each other and share. And even with adults in their lives, like grandma and grandpa or auntie and uncle, who maybe they're not getting to see in person right now, there's things that they can definitely do via FaceTime to make it really, really fun for each other. Or even, recording video diaries that they get to send to each other and reply. So again, we're wanting to use technology and screens as a way to continue their development and growth and interaction with their loved ones, even though they might not be with them physically present. But I did also want to mention, at Common Sense, we just launched a new partnership and amazing website where we partnered with organizations like companies like YouTube, Scholastic, Sesame Workshop, Zoom, YouTube, where we're curating all the educational tools and educational activities for kids that all these companies are producing at this time and putting them in one place. And we're going to share the link on the thread. It's called wideopenschool.org. And it's very accessible, very easy to view. And we're curating activities and learning tools for children every single day. So please go check out wideopenschool.org.
Thanks for sharing that. And we have another question that came in from Stephanie. She, it sounds like, is trying to work from home and take care of her little one at the same time, and asks, do you have any advice for trying to do schoolwork with a kindergartner and a 2.5-year-old preschooler simultaneously?
Well, first of all, Stephanie, you're not alone. I want you to know that. Secondly, I tell parents all the time, especially during this particular quarantine time, to adjust your expectations. We are in a different time, and it's important to give yourself permission, give yourself grace to allow yourself to have flexibility. If you can't get something done with your children related to homeschooling, remote learning, it's okay. Prioritize what needs to get done. And the way, as with myself and as an educator myself, I always focus on the must-dos versus the can-dos. And every day can look a little different. Your child's needs come first, and your family's dynamics and what their needs are comes first. And so put aside any type of judgment or anybody else's, what anybody else might be doing or what they're able to accomplish, and focus on your family. I would make sure that you have a place in your house that is considered their work time, and keep it as their work time. We don't want to mix work and play. Just like you as a parent, when you're working from home, you have your designated area. Children need that too, even toddlers. And make sure that you embed breaks. Know how long your child can really attend. Sometimes with a little one, it really is only about 5 or 6 minutes at a time, and that's okay. You want to encourage them to come back to work, but again, don't force it. If they don't want to do it, it's okay, because the goal right now is for your children educationally to just maintain the skills that they have and to continue that love for learning. Schedules are really important, and creating one that works for your family is very important. And I've got some available on my social, my Instagram pages. I've got some sample schedules, but I always want to incorporate with schoolwork opportunities to go outside, opportunities to have activities. And although they are on the screen, when they do step away, try to engage them in a lot of motor development and motor activities, because that helps to get, I always say, the sillies out, really gets them stimulated in a different way. So when they do come back to a computer screen, they're ready to go and ready to attend.
And what about if you have kids of different ages in a household? The needs of a 2-year-old might be a little different than the needs of a 4.5, or even like an infant who is like needing some tummy time or things like that. How do you keep everyone happy?
I mean, you have to keep things motivating, right? It's very challenging. And so I love surprises. And so I've created just alone surprise boxes, surprise bins. And so when you find yourself in a predicament where you've got your little one who's an infant who needs a feed or maybe needs to be put to sleep, and then you've got your preschooler or maybe 4-year-old or even a kindergartner, a 5 or 6-year-old who really is seeking out your attention. I mean, oftentimes that's why we see behaviors in little ones, is because they want our attention. And that's what a behavior is communicating to us. So create those baskets that you only bring out when you really find that you're going to be juggling a lot.
Yeah, what do you put in a surprise basket? I would like to have a surprise basket.
Here, I love the dollar stores, and this is where when you can, and you can go out and even online, simple things like Oriental Trading Company, the 99-cent store, the dollar store, any of those craft stores. You just get those, you see the bins when you're up close to the register. That's when I grab those things, but I don't bring them out unless it's the surprise time. And that's when you have that curiosity lasts a long time, and that's when kids are motivated. But pull those out when you are potentially, maybe you're nursing a newborn, or you're trying to put your toddler to sleep and you've got a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old trying to keep them busy. And so that's where you can find those coloring books. Think about when you go on trips and what you try to pack. We tend to try to get things that are new. And so you can get those little mini Play-Dohs, Wiki sticks. Those are all great things to have just for those moments.
Another, sorry, go ahead, Mariana.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just wanted to share a couple of activities that we've been hearing parents have success with. And one of those is the infamous building a fort time, which is especially fun with young siblings, to just kind of, maybe it's a morning routine. In the mornings, they get to build their fort, build their space with the pillows and the blankets and the chairs, and, just hang out in there for a couple of hours, maybe doing different activities like coloring, or be on an iPad or a screen. That's okay, because it's providing them a little safe nook of a space that they get to just share with each other. And it makes them feel, gives them a little bit of autonomy during those times. And then another activity, for example, in the afternoon after lunchtime, for them to, get all that energy out and get that physical activity, is, music video time. So music video time, all parents need to do is set up, their smartphone or their tablet on a tripod, or, just like make it stand, and have kids dance in front of it to their favorite playlist, and just sing and dance until they are tired and ready to nap. And while they nap, parents can then put the clips onto one of those apps that automatically edit a music video for you. By dinner time, you're having a screening for your children of the music video that they created, that they're starring in. So that's an example of an activity that some parents have been implementing into their after lunch routine every single day. And it's just that thing that kids expect. After lunch, we have music video time. So every family is different, and every family has their own core values, and based on those, feel free to create these new routines. Kids right now don't always have to be, learning a math problem for you to feel like they're growing and learning and developing. You can find other ways for them to continue interacting and being social.
I'll let you guys in on a little secret too. If you guys listen to the radio, you can actually imagine your favorite reporters in a fort of their own, because all of us are tracking our stories from home right now. So I have to pull all the comforters and the pillows off the bed and make myself a little radio fort to track my stories under. So just imagine that next time you hear a really serious radio story. So another question that we've had come in, Ashley says, thank you for your hard work and recommendations. Do you know of any apps that have been created with input from early learning educators, specifically apps that encourage critical thinking for pre-K students, rather than apps that ask only yes or no or black and white questions without exploring the reasoning behind the answers? I'll start just because I've heard a little bit in my own reporting. A lot of people are happy with the apps that PBS Kids have that are associated with some of the kids' favorite shows like Daniel Tiger, things like that. Also, I've heard Go Noodle is more of like a video app, but they're really active videos that encourage different kinds of movement and activity, which are those large motor skills. But Rocio, what have you heard about that might be some more developmentally appropriate apps for younger children?
Absolutely. We have some curated best of lists with TV shows, movies, all kinds of children's content, including video games and apps. And 3 that we really recommend for preschoolers are Crazy Gears, play and learn science. And my favorite is Peep Science Ramps. And what I love about an app like Peep Science Ramps, and all of these are free, by the way, and in English and in Spanish. Peep Science Ramps, the kids watch, a video of their, these little characters creating these ramps and playing with the levels, and it's getting them thinking about science concepts and physics and all of that, even at that young age. And then they get to do an activity guided by the app in the video. An example is, with the toilet paper roll, you cut it and then you place it on different platforms to create ramps. So we love apps that kids are able to look at the video, look at the content in the screen, and then make connections to real life with an actual physical activity that they get to do. Those are our favorite type of content, where they get to make connections and actually play with those concepts themselves.
And that's funny. Actually, when I was younger, I remember I would get old boxes of my parents' business cards, and we would tape them together with masking tape to make different ramps around the living room. So that's a really fun memory, a way that you kind of upcycle these things that you have around the house. This is a question I think Reena might be able to help us out with. Rachel says, I have a newly 3-year-old who hasn't actually started school yet. They've mostly been playing and reading. She wants to know whether she should be trying to do some more structured learning in addition to that.
I think that's a great question. And the answer is yes. I think anything we can do to get our children ready to learn, I always call it ready to be in school, is so important. And so whether it is, I recommend finding that workspace that you find around your house to really get them ready. And sometimes it's on the floor. It doesn't always have to be sitting at a table or sitting at a desk. It could be on a beanbag, on a pillow, on a little mat. Montessori learning does a great job. And if you have any of our families out there who attend Montessori school, they have a rug area that's on the carpet, and it's just a small little mat. You can even use a placemat where you keep your work. And it really teaches children the work ethics of getting ready to learn. I mean, that's a life skill. And so that's my suggestion. And 2, start with activities that they love. Learning isn't always paper, pencil. You can have a whiteboard, you can have some put-ins, some blocks. It's really about doing something that is presented in the form of a demand. And so an educator, and right now us as parents, we're the teachers. And so creating maybe a 1, 2, 3 type of a schedule for work, especially at age 3. I don't want to put too much, but maybe the goal is to sit in an area and work on a few activities for about 10 minutes and have that area designated, and then let your child choose. I think when children have choices, they're more likely to comply. And just like us as adults, we don't want to be told what we have to do every single minute of the day. So I think it's important to give them at least 2 or 3 choices, have that designated area, let them do maybe an inset puzzle, or maybe it's pulling string through some type of animal that has like little holes in it. Maybe it's a pegboard, maybe it's a coloring book. It doesn't always have to be, like I said, paper or pencil tasks, and maybe it's being creative. There's some great art programs on YouTube actually that are just geared for preschoolers that really take you through all the steps of having to create and draw and create something fun. So have those activities, no more than 3 or 4. Let your children kind of decide what they want to start with. And right away, you've almost created a typical school day structure for what it would be like in preschool.
And it was funny, when I was doing some reporting on activities to do with kids, I was really kind of surprised and delighted to learn that even everyday chores can be a learning experience for your kids. So example, when you're doing laundry, the sorting of the laundry, having your kids help you sort by color, by shape, those are teaching them how to classify. You can count. That's teaching them math, the early concepts of math. I was always really excited as a kid to get to like hurry and like ball up all the socks so that I could throw them at my brother. I'm not really sure what educational thing that's attached to, but it was really fun. So I think that so yeah, that would be group play. I think that counts as something educational. So yeah, there are a myriad of ways to incorporate learning into your day. Rocio, we have a question This person is wanting to know about resources in Spanish, such as articles about things to do with kids at home. What's out there that can help either kids that are in monolingual households improve their skills, or we know that there are also lots of kids who are going to bilingual programs now because learning that second language is really seen as a strength later on in life.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that you asked that. The work that I've been doing for Common Sense Latino, which is Common Sense Latino is a program within Common Sense organization, and we focus on doing just that. Not just translating, but transcreating content that is relevant for our Latinx families and our monolingual Spanish-speaking families. So we have, yes, a ton of articles and a vast library of short videos where we give recommendations on parenting in the digital age, as well as recommendations for apps. For example, Canticos. Canticos is a bilingual English and Spanish program where kids learn different songs that are based on those, traditional Latin American songs. And so they get to watch these very friendly characters do fun things, and they get to learn these songs in English and in Spanish. But in addition to that, the articles that we recently have come out with is cómo balancear los medios de tecnología durante la crisis del coronavirus. So that's, how to balance this new digital age and screen time during the coronavirus crisis. We have actividades divertidas y educativas para que los niños hagan en casa. We have, sorry, I'm not translating everything, but I just want to make sure that our Spanish speakers know,
okay.
and that our Spanish speakers, that our educators that work with Spanish speaking families also know that we have a ton of content for our Spanish speaking familias. And I also wanted to mention, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mariana.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and then I was even just looking the other day and I saw that the Los Angeles Public Library System has started to put some storytelling videos online, and their bilingual storytelling is also online too. So just because you can't go to the library with your family doesn't mean that there aren't ways that you can engage with those people in both English and in other languages as well.
Lots of great content online for our bilingual families. And I just wanted to share, in addition to wideopenschool.org, Common Sense has recently launched a text message program in English and in Spanish. So now families can also receive our Common Sense advice and tips in a bite-sized, practical text weekly. And so I wanted to actually share this very quickly to promote our for families to receive our Common Sense tips. All they have to do is send the word kids to the number 21555 to receive our weekly tips in English. And then for Spanish, they just have to send the word familia to the number 21555. And we're curating content every week specifically relevant to this time of crisis during the coronavirus.
That's when you know you have a top quality guest, when they brought their own props to support their presentation. So I appreciate that. So this is something that we touched on a little bit earlier, but I think it's probably worth going back to, since I think there are a lot of families out there that have children of different ages. This comes from Kelly. She wants to know about sibling activities that might help kind of diffuse or respond to some rivalries that happen when she has her 5-year-old and her almost 2-year-old playing at the same time.
Well, it's very common when we're around each other for a very long time, for children especially, to start to have a little bit of conflict. It's natural to have that frustration. And so I recommend first allowing times for them to be alone, so they're not always having to be together, even if it is a little separation in the same room. And then creating those excitement, the surprises. And so maybe it is creating a little bit of what I call a family or sibling activities schedule, and letting children almost pick out of a hat what they have to do together. And I love themes. I love themes for families, and it might be a theme of the day or theme of the week. And so being creative, and that also means going outside and using your senses. And so might be, for example, a scavenger hunt where children have to work together. So you're creating a structured activity that they actually have to share and work together and take turns. Not to say that there's not going to be a little bit of conflict, but reward at the end. And oftentimes it doesn't have to be something tangible. It could be, I'm so happy, I'm so proud that both you and your brother or sister worked together to complete a task, to complete an activity. Just that verbal praise goes a long way. And it could also be that at the end of it, if they work successfully, and one of those things is make sure it's visual, make sure you create rules. And part of the rules are they have to work together as a team. And working together as a team, what does that look like for a toddler? And so let your children know that means that you're going to, if someone else is talking, you're going to listen. If someone finds something before you, it's okay. You're going to be that good player and let them know, good job. And so it's really creating those rules in what works for your child where they are developmentally, and then making sure you, as a parent, reward the fact that they were working together. And so it could be going back to creating a fort, working on a puzzle together, doing a craft together. It's the excitement. And so when you kind of create a theme or an activity for them to do that they don't know what to expect, it really does motivate them to work together.
And what are some ideas for themes that people might look to?
I love things. When you think about preschool, think about like the letter of the day. I always love to go back to the letter of the day. It teaches us the 26, because think about there are 26 letters. Let's start with the letter A. And so think about starting, that's one way to think about creating your themes. And so maybe it is thinking about a color. We are going to work with things of a color. We're going to work with animals, or maybe it is thinking about we're going to work in the kitchen, and maybe it's creating things together, recipes and so forth. So think about the seasons. Think about the characters of a particular program. Think about maybe it's all about cars today, and maybe the next day it's all about blocks. And so you're going to work with different blocks, and you're going to create different types of houses, or different types of outdoor activities. And so think about things that are naturalistic to you and things that you have, and that's where you can find themes. And think about what children typically do in a school. They usually find a theme and stick with it. And for example, even as families, a lot of us are homebound and we can't travel. So one of the things that I love seeing families do, and that we are starting to do ourselves, is we really can't travel. So what would it be like if we went to Mexico, and what would we want? Let's create some maracas, or maybe we're going to have some tacos for dinner. And so it's really kind of sticking to that and letting your children help you decide. Just because your child is a toddler or 3 years old doesn't mean that they can't give some input or decide on what it is that they want to take part in or have. And then you're going to get a lot more compliance and a lot more buy-in when they've helped create those activities.
And yeah, and just maybe this is like some problem solving, but what happens if you've come up with this theme, you have this idea that you, the grown-up, think is really great, and then you pitch it to your kid and they are just not interested? What should you do?
And that's very well why the importance of coming up with it collectively is so important, because they help create it. And so again, it goes back to choices. And so just because you created, for example, maybe you want to have a Disney day. Maybe it's all about, creating things that are either Disney princesses, or doing activities, whether it's a coloring sheet or building something with Legos, and it is like a theme park, but maybe it's something that they want to do. So amongst that theme, maybe make sure that you provide 2 or 3 choices that you can live with as a parent, that your child actually picked. And it works all the time, because when they are in control and when they're in the driver's seat, you are going to get so much more buy-in versus mommy or daddy or auntie or uncle or grandma or grandpa saying you have to. And when you allow them to make a choice, they feel like they've got that autonomy and control.
So there are quite a few. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Just wanted to add a couple of other ideas for that playtime together with siblings, and really praising them for that time, as Reena was mentioning, praising them for the time that they are doing so good. But right now is a time, I know parents, it's so difficult to have just that extra patient, and instead of scolding the bad behavior, which it's understandable. A lot of kids this is very new, and they're getting a little frustrated. So focus on the moments where you're seeing good behavior. And a couple of ideas for that time together. I've heard some parents mention kids love spray bottles. And since we're in this, being very, very neat and that clean time, is helping them create a safe, like a water vinegar with a little bit of organic dish soap, and just have them spray every surface in the house. And that's something they could do together. One kid sprays, the other kid wipes, and you can kind of monitor them. And every surface of the house, we're going to go through every single room. And something else is to document it. And again, this is using technology as a way to engage and help kids learn. Document a little bit of them working together. Maybe it's a little bit like a 10-second routine that they do where the older kid dances around the younger kid, and then send it to a loved one where they are also getting praise from somebody outside the house. And so that's something that they can look forward to. Are we going to send our daily video to grandma or grandpa or auntie? And what did they say, when they received it?
And cleaning, a lot of cleaning is just one way that we're living our lives a little bit differently right now. Another one is that it's been recommended that if we're going out in public or if we're interacting with people who are not part of our household, we are wearing a cloth facial covering. Not a medical mask, because we want to try and reserve those for our first responders, but some kind of cloth facial covering. Maybe it's handmade or a handkerchief. And I bring this up because Anel asked us, how do you explain the use of a facial mask covering to an infant or a toddler? Now, I can speak a little bit to this first from my own reporting, which is that the recommendation from the CDC as well as local public health officials is that you do not put any kind of facial covering on a child who is under 2 years of age. And that's because that might cause them to have trouble breathing. And when they're that young, they're not going to be able to express to you that they are having trouble breathing. Also, the role of the mask is to stop us from spreading germs to other people. And so, there are ways that you can help little kids do that by wiping their face, wiping off their mocos or their boogers. Like, that's ways you can help them keep other people safe. But if your child is older than 2 years old and you do want to introduce this idea of facial covering to them, I was talking to some childcare providers who are caring for the children of essential workers earlier this week, and they said, make it fun, allow kids to decorate their facial coverings with, maybe characters that they like. Someone else I talked to, her son is really into the Disney movie Cars. And so a friend of theirs made a fabric mask with Lightning McQueen on it. He was really excited about that. There's some tips you also want to express to them that, once they put it on, they shouldn't touch it because that's going to put germs from their face onto other surfaces and vice versa. So one way that a childcare provider I talked to in East LA is introducing this idea to kids is that putting on a mask is like a superhero putting on a cape. So you put on your superhero cape and you put on your mask, and that's the way that you're helping keep other people safe, because again, maybe they're not going to understand the importance of the mask from like a health standpoint, but if it's fun, then they're more likely to engage. But Reena, I was wondering if you have any other ideas on introducing this kind of strange, unfamiliar thing of putting something on your face to a little kid.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I too brought something. This is a great book. It's incredible, and it's called A Coronavirus, a Book for Children, and it's by Elizabeth Jenner. And if you Google search, and I can give you the link after, but it's like a storybook. It goes through the stages of this whole pandemic, and it does get to the stage of having to socially separate and be apart. And just that whole concept of why do I have to be 6 feet apart is so abstract for our little ones. And so I agree with you. Under the age of 2, children can't articulate. We have to make sure they're able to breathe. If at all possible, do not have them out and about, and just to protect them as well. But when you have to do those essential errands and you need to take your children, creating a story with them in it and it doesn't have to be something that you have to go out and purchase or download or create. It can be with some crayons and some paper, but having your child in that story and making sure that you have their name so they see themselves in this particular real life scenario, and making sure that you teach them the why. Why are we protecting them? And they may not even understand what the word virus means. And so oftentimes I'll use it's a small invisible bug. And that's really what a virus is. And we're protecting everyone and ourselves. And then going through modeling. Children are observational learners. And so when they see that you as an adult, as a parent, are practicing proper hygiene, they're more likely to practice the proper hygiene. So this goes with hand washing. This goes with not touching your face. We as humans have a tendency to touch our face multiple times. And so really practicing what we are saying, and then teaching them that yes, and I love the cape idea, because a lot of little ones, even girls, want to be superheroes, and they need to play their part in this community. And that's why it's so important, because lots of people are counting on them. So when you create this storybook, make sure you create it like that so many people are depending on them, and that's why they're doing this, and they are going to help save and help protect and help take care of everyone, just like the doctors and the scientists and the researchers are. And when you do have a scarf, again, it doesn't have to be something that's wrapped behind their ears. You can use one of those almost like cowgirl bandanas as well, because again, they're not in the hospital. They're not on the front line. So you just need to protect their nose and their mouth. Doesn't need to be too tight. Use a fabric that's motivating, something they've picked out. And when you remove it, do not touch this part. Always remove it from the back off, and always pair it with some type of reinforcement, because this is something that they're not used to and something they may not want to do. Make sure you praise their effort, praise that they did it, give them some type of, superhero mask type of sticker, reward, anything to kind of get the likelihood that they're going to do it again and work with you and not have so much of a struggle the next time around.
And I wanted to say, if adults watching us today have some questions about masks, procuring them or making them, one of our previous No Panic events was actually all about masks. I have a very talented coworker who has made a bunch of masks for us in the office. And so Sharon McNary leads that conversation, and one of us can drop the link to that conversation in the chat. And so moving on to another question. For children that might have disabilities, whether that's been identified through an IEP, through their school, or maybe just some developmental challenges, it's been a challenge for a lot of those folks to get services right now. Jenny asked us, my almost 2-year-old is a bit delayed in his speech. We just started trying to do speech therapy over video, but she's finding it kind of difficult. Are there any resources that you would recommend to help with this? And Reena, what do you think?
It's definitely difficult with children with special needs right now. A lot of their services that typically would happen at school, all the supplemental services, designated social services, in-home therapy has really either halted or gone virtual, and that is difficult. And so it's a new type of territory right now. What I can recommend is ask your service providers to provide you with some exercises and tools, for example, for speech that you can practice at home. There's a lot of speech exercises and activities that we can do to help, for example, if they're having an articulation difficulty, maybe it's an expressive difficulty in terms of formulating words, or an understanding, which is receptive difficulty. There are some great things that you can do with just basic board games, which are basic Connect 4, things like that you can actually work on at home, but you need the guidance of that specialist. So you can work on certain things on your own, along with having those practice exercises and therapy sessions virtually. And so in terms of resources, it really does depend state by state. I know in California for children Under the age of 3, we've got the regional center, as well as obviously under the age of 5, depending if you have a diagnosis or disability. But you can definitely go on. I am an educational psychologist. I do help families. So make sure you go to my website at www.reenabpatel.com, reach out to me, and I can help connect you with, depending on what your specific needs, because sometimes it's occupational therapy, or maybe it is a child who has ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and who's seeking out ABA services. So it really does depend on what their specific needs are, but there are definitely plenty of resources out there.
I actually just wanted to share commonsense.org. We have a whole guide. It's called our Power Up Guide. It's Learning Differences and Special Needs Guide. And we actually break down recommended programs and well-designed apps that are recommended and tested by field experts. And we divide it up by categories. So communication, social interaction, organization, and motor skills, math and reading, writing. So parents can go and look at specifically, what they feel is the area that their child is needing some extra, stimulation and learning. And so I just shared the link, but you can find it also on the commonsense.org website and at wideopenschool.org. Sorry to keep pushing our wideopenschool.org.
No, we appreciate the resources. And I want to talk a little bit about age of kids and use of technology. So we have a question here from Kelly. She wants to know if there are apps or media that's recommended for an almost 2-year-old, or whether her son is too young. She wants to know what are some age-appropriate activities. He wants to do like some coloring and crafts like his older sibling, but then he just puts the crayons and glue in his mouth. So are there some technology that is appropriate for this age?
Well, we know that pre-COVID-19, the AAP recommendation for children up until 18 months is to avoid screens. And we know that, again, maybe parents are relying on, some screens, some tablets, to keep them entertained. So we're going to say, keep in mind that before, from 0 to 2, children are just at a very, very critical phase in their development. So definitely not, handing them the iPad for all day long, right? Or for hours on end, but really choosing high quality content that is interactive, that they get to really, it's that it's a conversation between, what they're watching and what they're, how they're responding. And in addition to that, did also want to say, use FaceTime with relatives. We're going to advocate, promote FaceTime. And a research was made on, it's really special when you give, let's say, grandma an item like a green ball, and then you give your child, that's maybe, 19 months, a green ball, and you have them interact with each other via FaceTime or video chat with that toy. And this research was done that, talked about how kids were able to, make connection, like grandma has a green ball, I have a green ball. So I think, again, it's thinking about how we're using screens versus the amount of screen time that children are on.
And I'd like to add as well, ask yourself as a parent, what is your goal with the particular activity? So if you are wanting to work on colors, then what are other ways besides just picking up a colored crayon and coloring? I mean, there are great, just what was said earlier, just about matching items, or are we looking to look for everything in the house that's green, or am I going to look at sorting and I've got blocks, or I've got the teddy bears and I'm going to match and correspond the green colors. And so ask yourself, depending on the activity, what is it that you're wanting to get out of it? And for example, if we're looking at going back to the coloring, are we working on fine motor skills? If that's the case, and I know a child really is exploring at a really young age, so that's why they have a tendency to put things orally in their mouth and so forth, but they're curious. They're trying to figure out what that item is, what use their senses. And so look at the Magnadoodles, look at the Etch-a-Sketch. Remember those? Make sure you use those. Those things can still get out the product, the outcome that you want. Maybe if you are working on fine motor, maybe it is taking those little pegs and inserting them into a board. And so ask yourself, almost put that educator cap on, is what is it that you want to gain? And then look for the activity that really gives you the outcome that you want.
And again, those household items can be really useful for that. When I was talking to an early childhood educator a couple of weeks ago, she mentioned just taking something like dry spaghetti and Cheerios and having your kid put the objects on the pasta is a way to practice those fine motor skills. We have a question from Liana here. She says, what do you recommend for only children? Her toddler gets lonely and misses her playmates in isolation.
I mean, that's challenging. And I want to say, even at a young age, it's really important to validate what your child is feeling, because it is hard. We're in self-isolation mode. And just because as adults we're around, we're not the same as a same age peer or a neighborhood child, and so create those opportunities virtually. And I know Rocio can talk about some of those other platforms, but I know Zoom and FaceTime and all those opportunities to have scheduled play dates is really important. And one of the things I recommend is, although they can't exchange the toys and the items, you do have a lot of similarities in terms of toys at home. And so maybe it is playing with their dolls and having a mini tea party, but you're just doing it via screen time is really important. And birthday parties, although we're not unable to attend a birthday party. My child, who's 6 years old, we've been attending a lot of virtual birthday parties and celebrating, where each of us they have a little muffin or a cupcake or so forth, but we're still having those interactions. And the little ones, if you are remotely schooling, making sure that you have those opportunities. Just because you get on and are listening to a teacher doesn't mean you can't say hi to a friend and you can't have those interactions. And so finding, there's a lot of community networks, community organizations, even in neighborhood connections, where parents are facilitating this, but children are actually getting together on screen, playing games. There are a lot of virtual games out there that they're able to interact. And I know even with a lot of families have the Switch and have Nintendo, you can still do a lot of gaming. Of course, if it's educational, or even if it is a Mario Kart or whatnot, you limit that time, but you can still connect online with another peer. So I know Rocio probably has some more ideas as well.
And can I just interrupt for a second? So the very first thing that you said was talking about validating how your child feels. Can you tell me what's like some language parents can use for that? Because it sounds like what you're saying is if they come to you and say, I'm lonely or upset, don't just automatically say, oh, well, in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to see them, or, don't be lonely, I'm here. What's some language parents can use to, like you said, validate what your kid is feeling right now?
So I think it's a great question. Our children still have emotions. They have feelings. And so I always recommend leaning into those feelings. One of the things as parents we have a tendency to do, a lot of it has to do with our own upbringing, is we're oftentimes, when we're having an emotional moment, if we're crying, we naturally tend to say, don't cry. It's okay. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to feel a certain way. And I really want to teach families to rephrase that and keep from saying the word don't. It's okay. And that's what validation is allowing a child to really feel whatever it is that they're feeling and letting them know as parents that we hear them. And so one of the things that I like to do is a common little trick is use the common three senses. I see, I hear, I feel. And so use that. I see that you are crying. I see that you really want to go see your grandmother. I hear that you are upset because you're crying. And if you use those common senses as intros to your sentences, as your words, that really does help a child understand that mommy and daddy, or my caregiver, is really with me. They see and they hear and they feel what I'm going through. And that's what validation is really in a nutshell. And making sure that you do that really does calm your child down. and creates that bond and connection. And they're at home, and so they can still receive the hugs, and it really is important that you're there to make them feel secure. And so hug them when they are upset, and make sure they feel secure when they are having an emotional overlay or emotional moment.
That's so good. Just wanted to mention, I was talking to a friend of mine who has a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and she was talking about how she, first week when, schools closed, she was trying to still work full-time job as a social worker and be a teacher now full-time to her 2 kids under 5. And it got really difficult. Like within the first week, she was so stressed out that she realized she was stressing out her kids, trying to do it all. And she had to kind of pull back in and be like, I'm still superwoman and super mom, just having one goal a day for them, So again, it's kind of like getting rid of the guilt, getting rid of trying to do it all, and letting in your kids on the feelings that even as adults, we're also frustrated. We also have cabin fever as adults. So of course they're going to experience feelings like that as well. And to as we begin to connect with other parents, I think that again, showing kids that yes, we're apart, but we're not alone. We're just finding a new way of interacting. And so we actually do have some ideas for kids to do activities to do with each other via video conference or FaceTime. And that's a parallel play, Play-Doh and clay, scavenger hunts where, the parents give them a list of things that they have to, okay, now it's time to go find a comb in your house. And then they both run and get their combs and come back and see who gets the most points by the end. So making fun games to do with each other, charades, a show and tell, maybe it's a story time. Maybe they each have to tell a story, or even board games. Some board games, might be a little challenging, but if the kids are able to move their opponent's pieces, not virtually, but for them, then even that's helping them with their motor skills. So it's gonna require for parents to work together, but even that is going to be such an amazing example for children of how even as adults, we're having to get creative and work with each other to create these new experiences for them.
So another question we've got speaks to some of the reporting I've done, comes in and says, I would like to know why childcare providers are being pushed to open when school districts are going to be closed until next school year. What's the difference from childcare workers and school-age teachers? So yeah, we found out pretty recently that LAUSD is going to be closed through the rest of the school year. And I think it's important to know that there hasn't been any specific mandate either from the federal or state or local government that says, school district, you have to close down. Daycare, you have to close down. That was a decision that the district made on its own. And similarly, childcare providers are making their own decision every single day about whether they feel it is safe to continue operating. With childcare, though, you're right, there has been an encouragement from state leaders saying, we want you to stay open. And the reason that is because they want to ensure that essential workers like healthcare workers, doctors, grocery store workers, people who work in farming can continue to go to work and support, my life and your life and the current crisis that's happening. But that's not to say that this hasn't created some friction and some problems, because I've heard from childcare providers that are concerned about their own health. They're having trouble getting supplies, cleaning supplies. They're concerned about the health of the children in their care. And so right now there's different agencies, they're called resource and referral agencies like Crystal Stairs or Child Care Resource Centers that are working to get childcare providers more resources. And so if you are a childcare provider and you feel like you're not getting the supplies you need to operate safely, you can reach out and ask for resources. And if you don't feel like you can operate safely, there isn't necessarily going to be a penalty if you close. You do have that option to close. although I do know that's a really difficult financial decision for a lot of these providers to make because there isn't a lot of money in childcare and they don't necessarily have a cushion set up. So that's kind of just a little update on what's happening in the childcare world from what I've heard. And we're continuing to pay attention because, like I said, providers are deciding every single day whether to open their doors to families or not. And as a whole, the state is working to make sure that essential workers who need care to go to work can find it. But back to you guys. We're all operating on this impression that what we are going through is temporary. And so we had a question. This person has a 3-year-old, says that they're at such an impressionable age right now. And her concern is that once these strict guidelines, these social distancing guidelines about, standing 6 feet apart and wearing masks and maybe not getting to hug grandma and grandpa are lifted, she's concerned that her child's going to be uncomfortable being affectionate or close with people after this. And she wants to know, how can I help him feel comfortable around people again once we do know that it's okay to, hug our friends and shake people's hands?
I mean, that's a great question. And it's the natural human instinct to adjust. Everything is a transition, just like it took us some time, even my children, time to realize that we weren't on a long vacation. This was actually what was our new normal. And so when the time comes, you are going to see automatically things lift in increments. And for example, I most likely will not be come fall, for example, when a lot of public systems will start to open up, that all children can just all of a sudden go back into school. So there are going to be incremental changes, and it's really important to prepare your child. And you know your child best. So some kids take a couple of weeks to adjust, while other children take maybe just a day or even 2 days to adjust. And so it really does depend on what your child's needs are. I recommend going back to the type of learner they are. They're concrete learners and show through visuals, the better it is for them. So maybe it is creating a visual type schedule of what their day is going to look like and what that means. And oftentimes storybooks, when you create your own type of storybook with your child in it, it gives them that sense of security. And I do not think it's going to be a problem once your child has a few practice times where they're going to be hugging their grandparent or their loved one. They're automatically going to know that, oh, I get to do that. And so unless there is some type of aversion, which is less likely, your child is going to be able to jump right back into that routine almost innately. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's more about just preparing them and letting them know, again, they're safe, it's okay, they're not going to infect anyone, they're not going to pass on those germs or those viruses. These rules have been lifted, and validating and making sure that they know it's okay, then they're going to know, and especially when they're going to see lots of other people doing it, they're going to feel more secure about doing it as well.
Yeah, it sounds like this is going to be oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add, physical touch is not the only way to be affectionate. So right now is actually a really great time to show children, teach them the language that they can use to show affection to their loved ones or to people that they admire, with, simple phrases like, I miss you, we love you, I'm proud of you. In my family, we're teaching the children to clap every time they see a health worker or a fire person or paramedics or farm workers on the screen, the essential workers that are out, to clap, just clap. Every time we see them on TV, we just are going to clap, or we're going to send them a kiss, not even with our hands, but with just like, air kisses. And so that's a way also to teach children during this time empathy and appreciation, and give them their superheroes that are actually real people that are still working out there for all of us.
And I know I personally have been writing a lot more letters right now, sending letters to people so that when folks open up the mail, they see that I'm thinking of them. And I'm sure that applies to even little ones that can't even write yet, you can have them draw a picture and send it to a relative. We are finishing up here. I know that there are probably a lot more questions out there, but I want everyone to know that I'm available, and both Reena and Rocio are available. So Reena, why don't you share where people can find you if they have more questions?
If you would like further clarification on anything that we discussed today or other additional questions related to education, parenting, child development and behaviors, please reach out to me on my website, www.reenabpatel.com, or I constantly, every day, am putting out, especially during this COVID-19 moment, daily parenting tips on my Instagram at Reena B Patel, Patel. So those are the quickest and best ways to reach out to me.
And Rocio, where can we find all the great resources that you've talked about in this conversation?
Absolutely. This is my commercial moment, everyone. Wideopenschool.org. I mean it. Check it out. It's so easy to navigate. It's very colorful. If you're an educator, you have a page for you. If you're a family, we have a page for you, and lots of really great resources. And if you want your bite-sized content weekly, just send the word kids to the number 21555 in a text message, and you're going to start getting our weekly messages. And in Spanish, it's familia to the number 21555.
Well, I just want to say I really appreciate both of your guys' time today, or you ladies' time today, because I know that this is a huge world of information out there, and I think having your voices here has been a comfort to the folks that have been watching. I am going to continue to report on early childhood. I care about anything that matters to children 0 to 5 and their families, and I'm on all the social medias. I'll drop those links into the chat, and I just want you to know that if you have questions, if you just want to talk to me about what your experience has been like having your families home, I want to hear from you. And please keep listening to KPCC and following our work at LAist. We're all in this together, and that means that the stories we tell are both for you, and we want to tell them with you as well. Thanks everyone for joining us today.